Revolutionary Girl Utena is critically regarded as one of the best anime of all time, and it's my personal favorite show. In this video, we'll be examining the use of the color yellow in Revolutionary Girl Utena in 2 key shots, and we'll see how it relates to the core themes of the series. I don't want to waste any time since this video is long enough already, so let's jump in. If you haven't seen the series, I will be spoiling most of the show, so I encourage you to watch the series first. It's available for free legally on YouTube. There's a link in the description. Revolutionary Girl Utena stars a middle school girl, Utena Tenjou. When she was very young, Utena's parents died in a car crash, leaving her orphaned. Utena had lost all will to live until a wandering prince found her. He gave her a ring, saying that it would lead her back to him someday, and then disappeared. Utena is so impressed that she decides to become a prince herself. But was that such a good idea? The series takes place much later, when at age 14, Utena attends Otori Academy, a school with the same rose crest as the ring the prince had given her. Here she meets Anthi, a girl involved in a secretive dueling game which Utena is quickly drawn into. Anthi is said to be able to grant eternity to whoever she is engaged to at the end of a dueling game. In order to be engaged to Anthi, various students compete in duels. Whoever wins the duel gets to be engaged to Anthi, who, as the Rose Bride, obeys their every command. In the first episode, Utena wins Anthi as her bride, and as the series continues, she duels a variety of characters who are being manipulated by a mysterious man called End of the World. That's the basic plot, but perhaps more important are the show's themes. Some of them are, in no particular order, coming of age, homosexuality, as well as forbidden love in general, relationships, especially unequal, deceptive, or abusive relationships, memories, ignorance, feminism, and repetition. In addition to all of these, Revolutionary Girl Utena is a critique of similar magical girl shows which were popular in Japan at the time. Revolutionary Girl Utena's refusal to focus on one specific metaphor or idea gives its presentation a rich texture, because a particular detail can refer to any number of these themes at the same time. These themes are constantly conveyed via the dialogue, music, and cinematography. Today, we'll be examining how the themes of Utena are illustrated through the color yellow in 2 specific shots. Every major character in Utena is associated with a color. Anytime one of these characters is introduced, we see a frame surrounding the screen with colored roses at the corners. Usually, the color of the rose matches the hair color of who it's associated with, just to really make sure that the audience gets it. Utena's pink, Saionji's green, Mickey's blue, and so on and so on. Nanami is the character associated with yellow, and we'll be talking about her shortly. Whenever these roses appear, it's a cue to the audience that what's being shown is important. The roses appear at key moments in the series which need to be emphasized. The black frame around the screen indicates that this is the perspective of one of the characters, that this is someone's perception of the event, which is why duplicitous characters like Toga and Anthi are introduced with different colored roses than their hair. It's a subtle hint to the audience that these characters aren't who they appear to be. The frame and roses are the most consistent visual motif in the series, and one of the shots we'll be looking at today uses them. Colored roses also have a special cultural association for Japan, the Japanese art form of Hanakatoba. In Hanakatoba, different flowers stand for different emotions and concepts. It is referred to by name in episode 35. Different colors of roses connote different things in Hanakatoba, and we see that many characters match their flowers. According to some quick research you can find in the description, a pink rose stands for confidence, trust, and happiness. Red stands for love or lust. White stands for innocence or purity, and yellow stands for jealous love. So the first association we find for yellow is jealous love. We get another direct indication of yellow's meaning during the first clip episode, Tracing a Path. Here, each of the duels Utena has participated in are given a name, and their color is prominently displayed at the same time. Yellow's word is adoration, conveying a one-sided relationship, which is one of the major themes of the show. So we associate yellow with the word adoration. Yellow is also associated with youth. In the flashback showing Utena's past with the prince, yellow is used heavily to emphasize Utena's youth. Her dress, which cast her as a princess, is yellow, as well as the background showing a rosebush coming into bloom, further emphasizing growth and youth. Later in the show, Nanami and Mitsuru are introduced, two characters who are younger than the rest of the cast, and both of them are yellow. So, with those hints out of the way, we know that when we see the color yellow, it implies jealous love, adoration, and youth. If it was that simple, Utena would be somewhat clever, but not the work of collective genius that it actually is. Where yellow's true complexity lies is in how it relates to the characters associated with it. 4 different characters are associated with yellow at various points during the series, and so its meaning is directly tied to the actions and motivations of these characters. These characters are Nanami, Mitsuru, and to a lesser extent, Anthy and Utena. To understand yellow's meaning, we're going to be examining these characters' personalities and actions. Understanding their similarities is important to understanding what yellow means in the shots we'll be discussing. Yellow is first and foremost Nanami's color. She is first introduced in the 3rd episode, with a slow panning shot with the distinctive frame and yellow roses, letting us know she's important. Nanami is a very loud, very popular, and very cruel middle schooler at Otori Academy. As mentioned, this makes her younger than most of the cast. Nanami is completely self-centered, with one exception, her big brother Toga. Toga is the student council president and the big bad guy of season 1. His color is red, which stands for passion, love, power, and control. I could explain why, but this is long enough as it is, so just take my word for it. Nanami is completely obsessed with her big brother and constantly seeks his attention and validation. She hangs off him at every opportunity and has an almost romantic attitude towards him. Any girls which attempt to get close to Toga, and there are many, are vermin which must be exterminated. Nanami is extremely jealous of Toga's attention, which, as we talked about earlier, is one of yellow's meanings. Nanami has a trio of girls who obey her commands, and she uses them to deviously attack girls who get close to Toga, most often Anthy. Despite this, Toga is often neglectful, mostly chastising or ignoring Nanami. The only exception is when he has the chance to rescue Nanami from something, when he assumes the role of a chivalrous knight. Always an ally to girls, as he says. In reality, Toga doesn't care about Nanami at all, and lies and manipulates her for his own ends. Every few episodes there's a break from dueling, and we get an episode centered around Nanami instead of Utena. The first few follow a formula. Nanami attempts a manipulative plan to hurt Anthy, which is then foiled. This changes as the series continues, and Nanami develops, but it's important to understand that this establishes Anthy and Nanami as enemies. For now, I want to discuss episode 10, Nanami's Precious Thing. In this episode, we get a flashback scene from Nanami's childhood. A young Nanami brings Toga a pet cat for his birthday. When Toga pays attention to the cat instead of her, she steals the cat and throws it into a river. Nanami runs away crying after she sees the kitten float away. This memory represents Nanami's loss of innocence. Nanami was not only cruel to the kitten, but cruel to Toga, who she adores. This directly parallels Anthy's past. Near the end of the series, we discover that, long ago, Anthy's brother Akio was a prince who protected all girls from hardship. Both Anthy and her brother are implied to be mythical or magical beings, and Akio is revered by everyone as a hero. However, this proved to be too much strain, and he became too injured to keep fighting. With Anthy caring for him and an angry mob outside demanding that he fight, Akio decides to continue, even if it kills him. Anthy, desperate to save her brother, sleeps with him so that he will stay with her instead of leaving to help the other girls, saving his life but also destroying his innocence. She goes out to tell the mob that her brother is hers, and she sealed him away where they can't reach him. The mob calls her a witch and brutally tears her apart. Afterwards, Akio changes from a noble prince to his alter ego, End of the World, and creates the dueling game. There's a lot of stuff going on in this flashback that I'm oversimplifying or ignoring entirely here. The point is that Anthy hurt her brother for his attention and suffered for it, almost exactly like Nanami did. It's made very clear by this brief shot that the show is not encouraging this behavior, and that this is an action which did damage to Anthy and Akio. Both Anthy and Nanami did something wrong to someone they loved so that they could claim his attention. And this isn't a coincidence. Anthy and Nanami are deliberately compared throughout the show. So, here's a color wheel, something the artist working on Utena would certainly have familiarity with. We see that all the characters with opposite colors have strong relationships in the show. Saionji is jealous of Toga, Juri and Miki are good friends, and Nanami and Anthy are enemies. I'm not going to get into the other pairs in this video, but this is another indication we should compare Anthy and Nanami. Nanami and Anthy hate each other. Nanami dislikes Anthy for motivating Toga to participate in the duels. For her part, it's strongly implied that Anthy despises Nanami. I say strongly implied because Anthy usually isn't very forward with her opinions. As the Rose Bride, Anthy does whatever her current groom commands her to do. She's a very stoic character who rarely says much or reacts visibly. So when she does say something or act outside of her groom's orders, it's a rarity and usually an important character moment. One such action is to secretly torment Nanami. Throughout the series, Nanami is attacked by animals, and Anthy is an animal lover with many exotic pets, and we know that she has supernatural abilities. As passively aggressively as possible, Anthy has even named her pet chicken and her pet cow Nanami. Anthy and Nanami are both deceitful and manipulative. Anthy is just a lot better at it. Anthy manipulates duelists throughout the series in order to get them to participate in the dueling game. She plays the part of the servile Rose Bride because her brother Akio, who is actually the mysterious End of the World, tells her to. In reality, it is not her groom that controls her, but her brother. In episode 10, when Nanami becomes a duelist, she will also join the dueling game at her brother's command. Nanami and Anthy's relationship reflects the worst qualities of both of them. If we compare Anthy to Nanami, we see how Anthy's cruelty mimics Nanami's. When Anthy makes Nanami go to India, or turns her into a cow, which are both things that happen, we see that Anthy can be just as cruel as Nanami. Nanami reminds Anthy of herself, and Anthy can't stand how similar she is to the naive and weak Nanami. Nanami is ignorant of the larger forces at work in the school, and pridefully thinks that she can control others. She believes that she can make her brother love her by removing all other women from his sight. Anthy is well aware that Nanami has no control over Toga's or her own future. Nanami's life is based around Toga, and Toga's life is based around the duels, which are controlled by Akio. Anthy, as the Rose Bride, has no control over her life, and full understanding of this fact. Seeing Nanami fail to convince Toga to love her reminds Anthy of her own incestuous relationship with Akio, who has become quite the womanizer. When Anthy sees Nanami, she sees a naive and unlikable version of herself, and she takes out the anger she feels towards herself on Nanami. Nanami's vanity and self-confidence are contrasted with Anthy's self-loathing and shyness. It seems pretty likely that Anthy's jealous of Nanami's confidence and sense of self-worth, one of the meanings of yellow. This confidence comes from a lack of understanding, much like Utena. Utena and Nanami also have many similarities. Utena thinks she can be a prince and rescue Anthy from her fate as the Rose Bride, when in reality, Anthy has chosen to be where she is and can't be rescued by force. Utena believes that if she tries hard enough, she can make Anthy become a normal girl, and she participates in the duels to this end. She wants to rescue a person she doesn't really know from a situation she doesn't really understand. For her part, Anthy views Utena as a fool who is easily manipulated into doing what her brother wants. Anthy's word games indicate that she finds Utena's naivete amusing.
ですよねって、何、君も知らないのか？知らないのになんでそんなことをしているわけ？ウテナ様はなぜいつも男装なさってるんですか？これはなんとなく、まあ好きだから。私も同じです。私たちがいると迷惑ですか？
She almost directly broadcasts her intentions several times, but Utena filters Anthy's words through her own preconceptions and ignores the strange things about Anthy which don't fit her worldview. Utena is totally ignorant of how Anthy actually perceives her, just like how Nanami is totally ignorant of how Toga sees her. So Nanami and Utena both let their preconceptions of the world determine their outlook, and this makes them very easy to manipulate. Later in the episode Nanami's Precious Thing, Utena ponders whether to go to Toga's get well party. There's a small joke during Utena and Anthy's conversation where it's revealed that Anthy was talking to a cat she just rescued, when it had appeared that she was talking to Utena. We get this shot of Utena posed as a cat, which will be important later. Utena decides to go to the party after being persuaded to by Anthy. After a series of events, Toga manipulates Nanami into dueling Utena. Nanami is easily defeated, but continues to attack Utena even after the duel is over, until Toga calls for her to stop. Immediately after this episode is Toga's first duel with Utena. There are a lot of things which lead to the climax of this episode, but I'll just be focusing on one scene before the climax. Here, Anthy tells Utena that she wants to have friends, tacitly admitting that she's unhappy as the Rose Bride. Note the long, dark space between the two characters. Later, there's this heartbreaking scene where Utena tries to get Anthy to open up, but instead only ends up pushing her further away.
間違ってる！バラの花嫁とか誰のものとかそういうのはやめてくれ！その子は姫宮アンシーという名前の普通の女の子だ！
そう？君は本当に普通の女の子？
え？君だって嫌だろ？バラの花嫁なんて！私…君の考えをはっきり言ってやれ！私の考え？そう！君はバラの花嫁として扱われるのが嫌だろ？はっきりそう言ってやれ！はい。私はバラの花嫁扱いされるのが嫌です。
During this episode, Toga convinces Utena he is the prince from her childhood, and during the duel he lays down his sword, only to defeat Utena when she lets her guard down. This is the first duel in which Utena's been defeated, and she collapses. And then, to rub insult into injury, Toga shows just how pliable Anthy is to her current owner, commanding her to tell Utena that she's never wanted to be a normal girl, and that she enjoys being the Rose Bride, which Anthy then does.
行こうか、アンシ。
待ってくれ。姫宮は連れて行かないでくれ。姫宮は普通の女の子に戻りたいんだ。僕がいてあげなくては。世界を革命する力なんていらない。姫宮には僕が必要なんだ。
君は何も分かっていない。
本当なんだ。姫宮は友達が欲しいって言ったんだ。僕がいなければ姫宮はまた一人になってしまう。
アンシ。
はい。
君はバラの花嫁でいられて幸せだな。
私は バラの花嫁でいられて幸せです。
友達はいらない。一人が好きだろ。
はい、一人が好きです。
天井君、こういうことだ。姫宮アンシーは決闘の勝利者の花嫁。君とエンゲージしている間は君に従うという掟なんだ。
嘘だ。
バラの花嫁は主の望みに応えた。彼女を普通の女の子にさせたいと君が望んだだけのことだ。
嘘だ。
決闘に負けた以上、君とアンシーとは何の関わりもなくなった。彼女のこともこの決闘のことも全て忘れるんだ。
嘘だ。嘘だろ、姫宮。本当のことを言ってよ。バラの花嫁なんか嫌だって。友達を作るって僕に話してくれたじゃないか。
アンシー、お別れを言ってやれ。
ごきげんよう、店長さん。嘘だ。嘘だ。嘘だ。
Utena lays on all fours, and we see images of Anthi from Utena's perspective, with a distinct yellow border surrounding her. This yellow border conveys a huge amount of meaning in the scene. The shots with the yellow border are from Utena's perspective. These are memories of Anthi which Utena has. Utena is remembering the time she spent with Anthi, and has come into grips with the fact that she doesn't really know who Anthi is. The color yellow symbolizes jealousy, and it seems logical that Utena would be extremely jealous that Toga has taken Anthi from her, a feeling that will develop more in the next episode. This is also the first hint that Utena is objectifying Anthi. She sees Anthi as being owned by her, and Anthi leaving with Toga as her being wrongfully taken away. In reality, Anthi left because she wanted to, something Utena refuses to understand. Utena's objectification of Anthi as a tool for her own self-worth is something that will be explored much later in the series, but the first hint of it is in this shot. The yellow frame could imply that Utena is seeing Anthi as being like Nanami, a liar. Utena has just discovered that Anthi's statement, "I want to be a normal girl," was a lie, and that she was just saying what Utena wanted to hear. She suddenly sees that Anthi is a manipulator, just like Nanami. In the next episode, we'll see that Utena still wants to be with Anthi, so I don't think that Utena holds on to this insight. Utena rationalizes away Anthi's betrayal by believing that Anthi really must do as she is commanded, that Anthi is just an object, the Rose Bride. In reality, Anthi could choose to stop being the Rose Bride at any point. This disconnect sits at the heart of Utena and Anthi's relationship. Utena desperately wants Anthi to be happy, and knows anyone would be miserable as the Rose Bride. Utena has based her whole life on emulating her remembered prince, and she needs to feel like she has saved someone in order to be fulfilled. So she tries to fix Anthi's life, even though she knows very little about her, and thus has no idea how to actually help Anthi out of the hole that she's put herself in. Anthi, for her part, is never open with her feelings, and won't let Utena get to know her because she avoids all emotional contact with everyone but her brother. Anthi keeps this distance because she has convinced herself that only her brother could love someone as awful as she is. Both Utena and Anthi learn more about themselves and each other as their relationship progresses, and it forms the emotional core of the series. Most relationships in the show have some connection to this central relationship between our main characters, and the relationship between Nanami and Toga is no different. The color yellow in this shot reminds us of the last episode, Nanami's Precious Thing. This placement is to make sure that Nanami is fresh in our memory, so that we can make a connection between Anthy and Utena, and Nanami and Toga. Utena does what Anthy wants her to do, even if ostensibly the relationship is the other way around. Toga controls Nanami quite easily, as we saw in the last episode, when he got Nanami to duel without ever directly asking her to. Nanami doesn't understand that her brother is using her. Likewise, neither does Utena understand that Anthy is using her. Their affection is built on a foundational lie, which ties into the themes of unequal relationships and ignorance. To adore someone is to invest your emotions completely in someone whose faults you overlook or don't understand. Utena does care about Anthy, but not for the reasons she tells herself. What Utena adores is not Anthy, but her prince. What she loves isn't Anthy, but the fact that she can save Anthy. Anthy is the subject of Utena's adoration, but she isn't the motive. Nanami doesn't adore her brother, she adores the idea of her brother that she's created for her own selfish outlook. Throughout Utena, people are motivated by their memories of the past, by the idea of a person instead of the real thing. Yellow represents when this memory or idea is at its strongest, a bright light drowning out the dark truth. Utena being on all fours reminds us of the visual of her as a cat, something we just saw last episode. Anthy has just allowed Utena to lose. While Toga might have tricked Utena and schemed some to make this victory happen, Anthy's power is such that she could have easily moved the duel in Utena's favor, if she wanted to. Instead, she let the events play out as they did, and now watches as her pet Utena suffers. This parallels the conclusion of the show, as well as Nanami's actions with the cat. Both Nanami and Anthy sacrifice an innocent due to an obsession with their brother. The difference between Anthy and Nanami is that Nanami ran away crying with remorse from what she had done, whereas Anthy revels in it. It's hard not to imagine her enjoying taunting Utena by repeating what Toga tells her to. It's also possible that the comparison to Nanami is meant to show that Anthy does have some sense of remorse over what is happening to Utena, and because of this, she acts more cruelly towards her. Many characters in Utena push away those they want to connect with most. The color yellow draws attention to the fact that, while the specifics may be different, this moment is just an illustration of a larger truth that the series is trying to convey. By increasing the scope from one relationship to two, we can more easily generalize and understand the core message without getting bogged down in the specifics. It's easier to understand how these themes relate to your own life if they're shown from different angles, because any one relationship is unlikely to represent you well. Observing the same ideas from different angles makes it much more likely that the viewer will relate to different aspects of each different relationship. The parallels between the characters aren't just there to be a neat writing trick or a technical exercise. They're an important part of what makes Utena emotionally resonant. In the Season 3 episode, Her Tragedy, Nanami's fragile worldview is completely shattered. Her underlings are reading a blood type personality quiz and ask Nanami her blood type. It's revealed that Toga couldn't possibly be Nanami's brother because of the blood types their parents have. Nanami now has no claim to Toga, and she is forced to consider if she's different than any of the other girls Toga has used and discarded. Nanami thinks Toga's love for her is pure because the fact that they're siblings precludes any sexual motives. When the rug is pulled out from under her, she's forced to re-examine their relationship. Is she no better than the girls she hates, who idolize Toga? Isn't she just as disposable as they are? And how does she feel about Toga? This last question is the subject of this shot. This is before Nanami learns that Toga isn't her brother. Nanami, jealous of Toga's many lovers, sneaks into the bathroom while he's in the shower to steal his cell phone. Side note, this mirrors Nanami's cat. Nanami hurts Toga by taking something away from him because she wants his attention. Side note over. As she sneaks in, we hold on this shot, Nanami sitting on the floor next to Toga's discarded student council uniform, looking at him through the glass. Toga is a black figure, silhouetted by a red to yellow gradient with white above him. As I mentioned earlier, red implies passion, desire, and control. The red of the floor symbolizes the imbalance at the root of Nanami and Toga's relationship. Toga literally stands on top of the red color, and he stands while Nanami sits, implying his dominance. At the top of the frame is white, the color of nobility, purity, and the prince. The white at the top of the frame represents the ideal that Nanami believes Toga to be, and is contrasted with the red at the base of the frame representing Toga's actual nature. The yellow in between is Nanami trying to reconcile these two perspectives. Toga's features are invisible to the audience, and we only see these colors and his outline, much like how Nanami doesn't really know her brother, but only her own feelings for him. The black on the right represents how Nanami's fantasies are soon to be abruptly destroyed when she discovers Toga isn't her brother. Finally, there's the red rose in the top right. After this scene, we see the red rose when Toga hits on Nanami, and she's flustered by his sexual advances, even though he says he's kidding. Even without the context of the rest of the series, this episode teaches us what the red rose means. The rose and the length of time Nanami stares at Toga both imply that Nanami is enjoying the view. As Nanami leaves, Toga looks up, and he asks her about the cell phone immediately after the scene. Toga knew Nanami was in the bathroom and let her take his phone. So, like the other two scenes with the red rose, we see how Toga is the one who controls the relationship, and control is associated with red. By careful structuring of a few colors, a wealth of information is conveyed to the viewer. Even though there's no dialogue in the shot, it tells us a complicated story about the relationship that these two characters share. So after all that, what's the takeaway? Why did the creators of Utena choose to use colors to convey all these things? A first-time viewer would never be able to pick up on many of these details because they're reliant on information learned later in the story. It's not until episode 34 out of 39 that we learn vital information about Utena, Anthi, and Akio's past, which is necessary to understanding who they are. It's also in this episode we learn that Utena's memory of meeting the prince, the very first thing that we were shown, was false. Revolutionary Girl Utena is a story about seeking truth and how difficult that search can be. Utena learns to see past the falsehoods presented by society, herself, and Anthi. Like Utena, the viewer also has to see through falsehoods and figure things out for themselves. Revolutionary Girl Utena is obtuse because life is obtuse. As we watch the show and begin to make sense of its meanings, we mirror Utena's development. Revolutionary Girl Utena misleads the viewer just like Akio or Toga does, because it's trying to make a point. Society is deceiving you, your friends are deceiving you, and you are deceiving yourself. That's what it is to be a human. We all have at least some misconceptions about the world, especially when we're young. And so we also have misconceptions about the show, until we look at it from a more mature perspective, having finished the series. On my second to last rewatch of the show, I noticed the yellow border we discussed earlier for the first time. When I realized the connection between Utena and Nanami's cat, I had a very strong emotional reaction because I was the one who made the connection. The show didn't spell it out for me, I had to figure it out for myself. The whole show is about how Utena has to figure out just who she is and just who Anthi is. So making the viewer think about what they just saw and look past the immediate image is thematically resonant. It puts the viewer in Utena's position. The show asks viewers to work to understand it, because it takes a lot of work to understand the real world that we live in. Because that's the only way to grow up. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, this is the second time I made this video because I'm stupid. Hope you loved it.